Hello, everybody at KWRA Southwest Sand Springs and Midtown. We're so glad to see you today, and hopefully we're going to give you some great information. So I've asked your leaders to spend time with me, and these next 3 Fridays, I think, I'm looking at my whiteboard because we have our schedule up there. Next 3 Fridays, we are actually going to talk about things that really stump you in the field in your contract writing, in taking listings, in how to fill out documents. So over these next 3 Fridays, we're going to address things that we think are going to be interesting to you. Today's topics deal with Today's topics deal with TRRs and how to really write a bad one and how to write a really good one. So we're going to talk at length about that. And then Gary Griffith is going to address an interesting scenario in reference to warranty being interpreted as an assumption of an as-is contract. So if that makes any sense at all, we'll help make sense of it for you. I think you're going to find these compelling. So we're going to start right out with Debbie Dennis and Jessica Swaffer with TRRs. And Jessica, I think you have a question to pose.
Well, I think Debbie has it, but I'm going to go ahead, Debbie, and share our screen.
Okay.
Or do you want to ask the
Not
question
yet.
first?
Yeah, let me,
Okay.
I'll tell you when we want the screen up. So this was the question. We negotiated a great price for the buyer. The seller is paying all of the buyer's closing costs. How do I keep the buyer from loading up the TRR with too many requests for repairs? So in answer to that, I would say that you would actually start negotiating the TRR at the time of your initial buyer consultation. You set the mindset. When you initially sit down with the buyer and you go through what the contract's going to look like, what the process is going to look like, and part of what's in the contract and part of the process is the inspection period and doing the inspections. So when you tell a buyer, this is the time for you to discover things you didn't know about the house when you decided to purchase it. And at this point, they haven't even found the house, probably haven't even started looking yet. This is where you discover the things that are not in normal working order. So Don, will you read that in our contract, please?
Yep. Paragraph 7C. B on page 3. I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but this says that are not in normal working order, defined as the system or component functions without defect for the primary purpose and manner for which it was installed. Defect means a condition, malfunction, or problem which is not decorative that will have a materially adverse effect on the value of a system or component. I take that as not putting all these frivolous things in the TRR, and that's the way it's supposed to. Like buying a car, you don't say I want all the spark plugs replaced because they're 2 months old, and that's kind of what goes on with these TRRs. These inspectors will say stuff like the air conditioning system has 2 years of working components to go, and that's if it's in normal working order, it's in normal working order. He doesn't need to be throwing things out there like that, because a buyer, especially a first-time buyer, will latch onto that and say, I want a new air conditioning system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, where were you going to go with this?
Well, I was actually going on about the frivolous things, and I got into actually
Yes, you did. So thank you very much. Back to Debbie Dennis.
Air conditioning is not frivolous. Air conditioning is not frivolous. But like Debbie said, when you started working, before you even write an offer, you need to go over these things and say, we don't want to put every single thing this inspector says in there, because he has not studied our contract and he doesn't know what it says. And he'll point out everything like dirty doorknobs or something, and that we actually, as a real estate community, we need to stop that.
All right, so we need to let Debbie talk now.
Can I actually say something to that,
Mhm.
Debbie? And I learned
Yes.
this from you on your TRR skills many years ago, and this is what I generally will relay to people that I'm helping in this area is, old school, you would take a highlighter and you'd go through your inspection reports and you'd say, I want to highlight, yep, there you go, there's the highlighters. We're going to highlight with this color everything that you have to continue on with the sale.
Yep.
Meaning if they don't do it, it's a deal breaker for you.
Yep.
And so we're going to go through and highlight those items. And then now we're going to go through with this color and we're going to highlight all the things that you'd like to have, repaired, replaced, or treated. And I think that's a really good rule of thumb when you're talking about this, because I agree the inspector's report can get very detailed. So you need to hone in on the items that you'd like.
And from the very beginning with the buyer consultation, if you tell them that's the purpose of their investigation, is to uncover the things that are not in normal working order that would keep them from buying this house. We call them deal breakers because they're not inspecting to find out everything that is wrong with a 10 or a 15 or a 20-year-old house to bring it up to today's standard or a new house. That is not the purpose of the investigative period of time. And it's up to you to establish as the leader in this transaction what you'll say to them at the buyer consultation and guide them. But when you set that mindset from the beginning, I'll tell you, I heard an agent say one time, it was horrifying. And when you get the inspection report, this is a quote, and please hear me when I say it is horrifying. So I'm not advocating, I'm telling you it's awful. When you get the inspection report, we'll put everything on the inspection report on the TRR, and that's like a credit card to Lowe's for you to get the house fixed. Now, that's horrible. And let me tell you why. Jessica, pull up, if you will, that first TRR. I just want to show y'all a couple of things in a TRR that we just really don't want to do.
Can you see my screen?
It's got, can it go up a little bit? Will it?
As far as zoom in?
Yeah. There you go. No, you raised it on the screen. That's awesome.
Okay.
All goods. This is in the TRR. Buyer is 61 and can't go on the roof. The shingles that need to be replaced. A true TRR. And number 20 said, repair or damaged studs and sheetrock caused by termites, period, the end. TRR goes on to say, Toby Horn feels it necessary to remove at least 6 inches of sheetrock in the identified zones in order to complete his termite inspection. By law, buyer has the right, and it goes on for 2 more sentences. That's an ugly TRR. And let me tell you why. If you, to your point, if you negotiated a great price and got closing costs for the buyer, your negotiation is not over. You may negotiate the TRR, and now the seller's really mad. And if you got a TRR, just do number 3 if you don't mind. Pretend for just a minute you're the listing agent and you received one more. This one. This is page 2 of a TRR. Pretend you're the listing agent for just a second and you received this and you've got to wade through this to figure out what you're telling your seller that the buyer is asking for. And pretend for a second you're the seller and you thought you had a pretty decent house and you get a TRR that's 2 pages long. Now you're mad. You might have been okay with negotiating the price you did and doing the closing costs, but now you're mad. Okay, so let's assume you actually get the TRR negotiated. I'm telling you, there are opportunities for more negotiations ahead. It could be that your appraisal doesn't come in at contract price, or the appraisal asks for repairs to be done, or the buyer has to ask for a delay in closing. Now you've made the seller mad with a TRR that is this extensive. And I have to ask, why do we have an inspection report attached if we have to copy and paste out of the inspection report to the TRR? Attach the inspection report and go with the deal breakers. Because then when the seller sees that on the TRR, he sees 3 or 4 items. Jess, will you pull up the very last one that's in blue? He goes, okay, replace cracked chimney cap. Okay, well, I didn't know the chimney cap was cracked, but all right. Replace the loose shower head and fixtures in the master shower. Well, I knew that, and I'm not surprised. Replace damaged shingles. Well, the roof is 14 years old, so I'm not surprised about that. And replace the rusted flashings. Okay, I got that too. Do you see how the seller is not going to be surprised in all likelihood by you in the beginning guiding your buyer to look for the deal breakers, not everything that's in the inspection report? I got to tell you, Don, back me up on this. The inspection report, when it says, for example, recommend a licensed electrician to evaluate, recommend a licensed HVAC technician to evaluate, that is CYA. That is the inspector covering his assets. And we don't put in the TRR to ask the seller to inspect his own home and pay for it. If the buyer is concerned about that, you need to extend your inspection period and let your buyer get more inspections and satisfy himself that this is what the house needs to be. So, Don, anybody jump in here?
So Debbie, can I ask you, then that doesn't, because I hear this a lot too, is that, well, we got the inspection report back and there was, you know, recommendations for additional inspections. And then the listing agent may say, well, go ahead and send me a TRR now, and then you can do those additional inspections. How does that mess up your contract?
Go Don Beach, jump in there.
Challenges.
I love how you handle this. Go.
Well, you'd have to have an extension to begin with. And if they're using the word recommended, you know, that's like they're using may or might or something like that. And if you get a broker or an agent that knows that, you know, and they'll say, well, it was only recommended, it wasn't required. And used to the structural engineers would never use recommend. Well, actually, they had a separate section for recommendations, and then they had a section for requirements. You remember that, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they do that anymore, but you got to be careful with what you put. If I were the buyer's agent and you got something that's that needs to be repaired, I would put a licensed HVAC technician, you know, will be used for this or whatever. I wouldn't say recommend.
To Jessica's question, when you tender the TRR, the inspection period is over. Correct?
Right. The 10 days that's allowed or whatever's in there. Yeah, that ceases the minute that it's delivered.
That's
and then
right.
your 7 days for negotiation begins.
Which is why you have to ask for an extension if the buyer wants to further inspect,
Yeah,
you're at the end of your 10 days.
yeah,
By the time you get ready to write the TRR, you're not at the end of your 10 days. So
yeah.
you can order another inspection for your buyer to pay for.
You don't want to still be doing inspections during your negotiation period.
No, no. Does that answer your question, Jess?
Yes, thank you.
I think one of the other
For
things to
sure.
remember is we're using the TRR and the inspection period to discover what is not discoverable or hadn't been discovered up to this point. The seller is telling us what they know about the property. We're going to use our own inspections to A, verify, and B, see if there's anything that has changed since the seller did that. Those are the items that should legitimately go into a TRR, those things that affect the systems that are in place that are not in normal working condition. Anything else can be considered almost cosmetic or bringing the house up to what the seller would or the buyer would like for it to look like. And that's not what we're talking about here. We are trying to identify something that if it doesn't get fixed, it doesn't get repaired, that we are willing to give up the purchase of this house if we
Yep.
discover it during our inspections and our TRR. Anything else, I think, is a little bit of a bastardization of what the whole process was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
You know,
And go ahead, Don.
well, it's a thing of a normal home maintenance, and I see all the time on these TRRs they put in light bulbs. That's just normal maintenance. If you want new light bulbs, go buy them. And screw them in there.
And you can see why a seller gets to the point at that when repairs come in on appraisals or they need an extension, the seller says, and I've heard it, I can't tell you how many times agents come to me and say, the seller said, I'm done. Well, the TRR pushes the seller beyond I'm done. And
Right.
we still need those items to be negotiated. He's done. And you can't get them negotiated.
One of the good points that you all bring up in all of this, if any of you agents out there have been listening to the Tuesday and Thursday shift Zooms, there was 2 or 3 of those sessions spent on bulletproofing a transaction. And I can tell you, these bad TRRs, that is not a way to bulletproof a transaction. So, boy, I hope everybody is listening closely to this conversation and maybe even go back and listen to it again 2 or 3 times and learn how to write these properly so that your transactions are not falling. So anything else on TRRs, folks, or shall we move on to our next topic that Gary had?
I think if we want to move on, I'm ready.
Okay, Jess, you ready?
I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank
ahead.
you, Jess.
Yeah, thank you.
The question that arose in a transaction that just happened this past week, and it involves the question, does checking the no warranty box on the property data form mean the property is being offered as is? And I was flabbergasted when I got the call and the question was asked of me, because one of our agents had a buyer and took them in, saw a listing that they wanted to purchase, wrote a purchase offer, negotiated price, negotiated all conditions, and then after everything was agreed to, the listing agent came back and said, okay, I also need you to send in a supplement, have your buyer sign a supplement that they understand that they are buying this house as is, and the seller is not willing to make any repairs. And our agent who had the buyers responded, how was I supposed to know that? There was nowhere in the listing did you mention that it was as is and the seller was unwilling to make repairs. And the response was, I checked the no warranty box on the property data form. And quite frankly, that doesn't do it. The no warranty box has to do whether or not the seller is willing to provide some kind of a warranty. The builder is providing a warranty or something of that nature. Has nothing to do, and nowhere in our contract do the words as is appear. If as is comes into our contract in any of the paragraphs, it would have to be something that we wrote in regarding as is. So the whole process, in my opinion, was not handled properly. If you have a property that the seller is unwilling to make any repairs to, that should be something disclosed in the remarks, the broker remarks or the public remarks, before you get a buyer involved in the transaction. The listing agent came back and said, well, if the buyer does their inspections and doesn't find something they don't like, they can always back out of the contract. Again, we're in a position to protect our buyers, and we're going to make them spend their money to find out that there are things wrong with the house that the seller wasn't going to be willing to fix anyway. So we spent our buyer's money. Contract is going to fall because he's not willing to do something. These are things that need to be divulged ahead of time before we get our people involved in the transaction. So if you have a listing, the buyer is unwilling to do any repairs, somehow mention that. If we have a contract comes in on one of your listings, just remember that unless you told them there was no there's as is condition, we're going to negotiate, and the contract says we're going to negotiate. If we can't come to a reasonable negotiation, then the contract can be null and void. But we have a process that's in place, and we need to understand what it is and be able to utilize it. Do not think that checking the no warranty box means that we're giving up on any negotiations in this situation. Am I right, guys, or am I
I
wrong?
think you're completely right. And I'll tell you, it also screams misrepresentation to me,
Yeah.
because that listing was not presented properly to that buyer. How do you know if a buyer would have even looked at that house had they known it was an as-is property?
Absolutely.
Because as-is alone can indicate some things that maybe somebody's not interested in dealing with. So I think it even goes beyond, not only did this agent not know what they were doing and checking the no warranty, but they also were, I believe, they were flagrantly misrepresenting to the public what that listing was all about.
Gary, define or explain if an associate puts in the remarks, this house being, or buyer and seller agree, this house is being sold as is. What does that mean?
Well, it can mean several different things. And quite frankly, we've got some standard clauses that try to explain that. They don't do it very well because it's up for interpretation. Anything you add to a contract is subject to interpretation, and we get nervous. As I've tried to teach people, we don't write contracts, we fill out contracts, fill in the blanks. And anything that we add that is our own verbiage is subject to legal interpretation. So be careful what you do. But we do have a situation where it can be as is, but you still have the right to conduct your inspections. If you find something you don't like, you can back out, or you can ask that be repaired. The answer may be no, and if it's no, then you can back out of the contract if you so wish. There is also something called as is, where is. Seller will make no repairs. And if that's in your listing agreement, that we're not even going to allow you to do inspections, then that's a whole other situation. And you would have to be careful in getting your buyers involved in one of those. So you have to know what you're looking for. There are some people flipping houses that don't care what the condition is, and it doesn't matter. They're not going to do inspections. They're smart enough. They think that they can walk through a house and know exactly that they can fix it and sell it and everything will be wonderful. But we have to protect the buyers, make sure that they are what they're getting into, and know the difference between as is with the ability to do inspections, or as is giving up the right to do inspections. And you just have to make sure that what the verbiage is and what you are allowing your buyer to become involved in, or what they are expecting in the transaction.
So I have a question. Is it, I don't want to say is it legal? Is it acceptable to take a listing and not disclose that it's an as-is property until time of contract?
Oh, I don't think it is. I think if you're taking a listing, I think
has
that
to be
needs to
there,
be
right?
disclosed right up front somehow, some way. I would think it is highly deceptive to put a property on the market that you know nothing is going to be done to and not alert the potential buyers to that. I wouldn't want to get my buyers involved in that situation unless they chose to. We sometimes forget that it's the buyers and the sellers that make the decisions. We don't make them for them. And too often I see agents who, my seller will never accept this offer. My buyer wants this, and you haven't even talked to your buyer, or they haven't even talked to their seller. So we can't make those decisions, but we need to explain, and we need to have the right information. So I think it is what you're saying, deceptive to put a house on the market without full disclosure on what a buyer can expect to be doing if we get into negotiations on this contract.
But it is conceivable that during negotiations, the seller negotiates a much lower price or pays closing costs and a lower price, and at that point says, okay, but I'm not going to pay I'm not going to pay for any repairs that come up as a result of inspections. And at that point, they write in as is part of negotiation, when that might not have been their intent in the beginning.
And
Right.
that's because they decided to accept a very low offer.
Yes.
And
yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
that does make sense. That's not a misrepresentation. That's truly a negotiation.
Right. I didn't want us to come across as any time
Yeah, that's
not
good.
in the listing, it's misrepresentation, because I have seen sellers negotiate, okay, you just beat me up on price, you got closing costs, I am not paying to fix anything.
Yeah.
It gets inserted in the contract as part of negotiation.
Mhm, that's good.
In years past, we had contracts that had a dollar limit in there. That the seller would be willing to spend this much money to fix anything that was wrong. And what was happening is buyers would come in there and put zero in that. We're not expecting the seller to do anything, lowball the offer, get the contract, and then do their inspections and come back and say, oh, by the way, we found this wrong. We want the seller to fix this. So we negotiated a lowball offer, and we said we weren't going to have the seller spend any money, but then we asked for it later on. That's just as deceptive as what we're talking about today, by not alerting up front what the condition of the property is or what you're willing to do.
Mhm, mhm.
Well, we had another problem too. Inspectors were going in there and saying, how much is in the blank that the seller's going to pay? And then they said, we'll make sure we eat that up. They were actually saying that to buyers.
That's why they took it out of the contract.
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the big
One of the
reasons
reasons.
they took it out.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, like Gary's saying up front, this is an MLS listing of course, and she put as is in parentheses at the end of the remarks. At the very least, they should do that to notify the buyers. I'm not willing to do. She should have gone further and put no repairs by seller, as is, no repairs by seller. But she put as is. At least they know the intent
Mhm.
because it's right there.
Yeah.
Would you
I
all
have a-
recommend that you put that as in the public remarks or in the broker remarks?
I think public, like she did.
Okay.
And I have a question. Would you enforce that in the listing agreement in like additional provisions, and then furthermore put it in MLS, or would you just state it in MLS?
You can do all of that.
Okay.
Well, Gary was saying put it in the listing agreement.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
Absolutely.
that's yeah. But what I said was, at the very least, have it up front in the MLS data sheet.
Yeah, in your marketing material, I think it needs to be revealed, because there are buyers who won't look at a property.
That's
There are
right.
agents that won't let their buyers look at a property if they knew what the condition of it is. You have a first-time home buyer and you get them involved in an as-is situation, you've got a little bit of a problem that can develop there when they move in and they flush the potty and it doesn't work anymore, and they're going to blame you for it anyway. So,
Or it backs up.
which it's going to happen, and that's called the joy of home ownership.
Exactly. And some of that's going to be a normal progression of what you're getting into.
Absolutely.
You know, Gary brought up the deal about the residential service agreement, and you know, it's never intended, and we have a lot of agents, not us particularly, but you know, across the city, that actually go into this saying, well, we'll just get you a residential service agreement. Don't worry about the repairs. That's not what these home warranty companies are in business for, and they'll deny that claim because, you know, they'll know that it was found on an inspection report, or they can tell when they send out their technician that it's an old problem, and they'll deny the claim. So
And
don't
was that
offer.
is that for the buyers though? I mean,
Yeah,
if
don't
they have a
offer
home warranty?
Don't say to the buyer you can have a residential service agreement in lieu of asking for repairs, because they won't do it.
Oh, that won't cover, that's right.
No.
I do have a question, and I'm going to be very transparent with our audience that I'm not in this loop as very much at all anymore, and so I have to defer to you guys. Is on the MLS data sheet, does the seller initial that or sign it? So that is why it is very important that it be in the listing agreement as well as on the data sheet, because if it's just on the data sheet, how does the seller know that it's on the data sheet?
They signed the
Sorry,
data.
They signed
I
it.
was thinking,
Data sheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then
I
that's
was thinking you were saying like, do they initial the final product or anything? But yeah, they do have a signature and date on the data form.
on the data form, so they know
Correct.
that it's on there. So I
Yeah.
like it in both places, but at least we know that.
But I want to throw this out because there is a thing called human error. And I had a boss years ago that told me, inspect the expected.
Mm-hmm.
First things our associates need to do is when their property hits MLS, is inspect what's going out publicly and
That's
being
right.
pushed on the internet. Inspect the expected, and don't wait for your seller to find it.
Well, that's exactly right, and yeah, you can't blame anybody else. Even if it was
Well,
hidden entry. If you're
Well,
not
that's a
checking
quote.
it,
That's a
yeah,
quote
you
from
can't
Gary
blame
Keller
anybody.
too, isn't it?
Yeah, Gary Keller
Mhm.
has always said you
Yeah.
have to inspect what you expect.
Mm.
So that's a very good point, Debbie. I'm glad you brought that up. Listen, guys, we have gone about 40 minutes, and I know that our audience can only take us for about 40 minutes. So I'm going to just summarize here quickly. First of all, we reviewed the TRR, and one of the things, Debbie, I loved everything you said, but the wisdom of saying you begin the conversation about TRRs at time of buyer consultation is brilliant. And I hope every single agent that is watching this will begin that exercise if they're not already doing that, they should do it. Don referenced the paragraph 7C. Is that right, Don? On the third page. So you all should look at that and read that paragraph, because that paragraph will tie into what the expectations are on the TRR and what yours should be and what the contract says. And that's what we have to go by, is the contract. Debbie also said you are the leader in the transaction, and this is exactly right. You're the one that is navigating all of this. You're the leader, you're the peacemaker. You can keep this whole thing going so that you're bulletproofing this transaction for everyone. And go with the deal breakers. Don't go with the nonsense. Go with the deal breakers. And then verify what your disclosure has is you're going to verify what's in the disclosure, so that what the seller is saying, yes, these are some things that it might be an issue. But then you're going to have your time of discovery. Your people are going to have their time of discovery. And then I'm going to go back to, remember, that is, you're discovering the deal breakers, not the nonsense. So that was great, Debbie, and I loved everything you said. Now, Gary, just to summarize what you were saying, is that, first of all, the no warranty is not referencing as is. It is referencing residential agreement warranties. Is that correct? So if anybody had that misnomer, I can't imagine if you've been educated by us that you had it, but if you did, you know that that is not correct. It has nothing to do with as is. And if a property is as is, it is incumbent upon us as the listing agent to get it in the listing agreement and then to also have it in the data form so we are not misrepresenting that property just as to something that it is not. So there are buyers out there that would have no interest in looking at an as-is property. And so that is our position. That is the position we want you to take. Anything else, you guys? Anything to add before I close?
Well, I would like to say something. I saw a inspection report the other day, 150 pages. And I
Oh,
remember when we started that inspection task force and several years ago, we were all complaining about, my gosh, these inspection reports have gotten up to 20 pages. And now they're 150 pages. And I really don't think that you can have a 150-page inspection report on adverse effects on a system or a component. There's got to be other stuff he's pointing out besides what it says in the contract is supposed to be inspected.
And Don, to that point, we are not qualified to read through 150 pages and know what's in that inspection report. So I always say, especially to new associates, ask the inspector that you want to consider as a vendor partner. Will he give you a summary page? And one more thing that we didn't say, agents don't create the TRR. The buyer creates the TRR with your guidance, and you put it on the paper.
say that again. Say that again.
Mhm.
That's true.
You do not create the TRR. The buyer creates the TRR from the inspection report, hopefully with a summary page, and you type it up and put it on the paper and get it in dot loop.
Could
I do
add
think
one-
it's on us, though, to write it correctly,
Yes.
which is why we're
Well,
training them.
yeah, and that's what creating it. I think that's what she was referencing. Okay, you guys, this was awesome. You are fabulous. You're all brilliant people. Audience, I hope that this was helpful to you. If you have any questions for us, you can email or private message or text any of your leaders that you've heard from today. Next week, we will be doing the same thing, and I think we're going to tackle multiple offers, and that will probably take the entire time. If you think of questions, we have one really good one already. If you think of some things that you want to add, then email. In fact, just go ahead and email Jessica Swaffer on that, and we will add them to the list. So thank you for being with us. We love you guys. We hope you're well, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.